Hey guys, tonight we set sail on one of the greatest adventures ever told, the complete story of the Odyssey. So before you get comfortable, take a moment, like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Our story begins not in Ithaca, but on the smoking ruins of Troy. After 10 long years of war, the greatest conflict in Greek mythology has finally come to an end. The mighty city that once seemed impossible to conquer has fallen, not through overwhelming strength, but through one man's extraordinary cunning. The famous wooden horse, remembered for thousands of years as one of history's greatest military deceptions, was the invention of Odysseus, king of the small island of Ithaca. While other heroes earned glory through unmatched strength or fearless charges into battle, Odysseus built his reputation differently. He was a master of strategy, persuasion, and quick thinking. In a world where warriors often solved problems by hitting them with spears, Odysseus had the rather unusual habit of using his brain first. It occasionally kept everyone alive. With Troy destroyed, the Greek kings prepare to sail home. Agamemnon returns to Mycenae. Menelaus begins his own difficult voyage back to Sparta. Nestor heads for Pylos. Odysseus also dreams of home, though for him, that dream has become almost painful. 20 years have now passed since he first left Ithaca. 10 years before the war were spent gathering armies, honouring oaths, and preparing for the campaign. Then came another 10 years beneath the walls of Troy. Back home, everything has changed. His son, Telemachus, was only an infant when Odysseus departed. Now he is nearly a grown man who barely remembers his father's face. His wife, Penelope, has ruled the household alone for 2 decades, refusing to believe that her husband is gone forever, despite increasing pressure to remarry. Odysseus has only one wish left, to see them again. He gathers 12 sturdy ships and hundreds of weary veterans. These are men who have survived sieges, duels, famine, disease, storms, and enough arguments between Greek kings to last several lifetimes. They believe the hardest part is finally over. They could not be more mistaken. Before long, the fleet reaches the land of the Cicones, allies of the defeated Trojans. The Greeks attack the coastal city of Ismarus, capturing supplies, treasure, and livestock. At first, everything goes according to plan. Odysseus urges his men to leave immediately while they still have the advantage. Unfortunately, discipline proves far less durable than bronze armour. Instead of boarding the ships, many soldiers remain behind to feast. Wine flows freely. Livestock is roasted over open fires. Victory celebrations grow louder with every passing hour. After surviving 10 years of war, they convince themselves they have earned one carefree afternoon. The Cicones, however, are busy gathering reinforcements from neighbouring settlements. By dawn, fresh warriors descend upon the unsuspecting Greeks. A fierce battle erupts along the shoreline. Odysseus and his men manage to fight their way back to the ships, but not before suffering painful losses. Several companions fall from every vessel. The voyage home has barely begun, and already the price is heavy. No sooner have they escaped than Zeus sends violent winds across the sea. Massive storms scatter the fleet, driving them far from the familiar waters of Greece. Days become weeks as landmarks disappear beyond the horizon. Eventually they reach a peaceful-looking shore inhabited by the mysterious lotus eaters. The people offer them a sweet fruit unlike anything the Greeks have ever tasted. Any man who eats it immediately loses all desire to return home. Memories of family, duty, and Ithaca simply fade away, replaced by perfect contentment. Some of Odysseus's sailors gladly accept the gift. Odysseus refuses. Realizing the danger, he drags his enchanted companions back to the ships by force, orders them tied beneath the rowing benches, and commands the fleet to sail away without delay. It is a harsh decision, but a necessary one. Sometimes the greatest threat is not a monster waiting in a cave, but the quiet temptation to abandon the journey altogether. As the ships disappear once more into the endless sea, neither Odysseus nor his crew can imagine that far greater dangers lie ahead. Their next destination will introduce them to a creature whose name will become legendary, a giant with one eye, enormous strength, and a father who happens to rule the oceans themselves. The encounter with the Lotus Eaters leaves Odysseus with an important lesson. Some dangers wear armour, while others simply smile and offer lunch. Unfortunately, the next island combines the worst qualities of both. As the fleet sails onward, a rugged coastline rises from the sea. Towering cliffs overlook rich green pastures where enormous flocks of sheep graze without shepherds in sight. Nearby lies another island, uninhabited but filled with wild goats, providing the Greeks with an easy feast after weeks at sea. Across the narrow channel lives a strange race known as the Cyclopes. These giants do not build cities. They have no kings, no laws, and no assemblies. Each Cyclops rules only his own household, caring little for neighbours or customs. To a Greek, this is almost more shocking than their single enormous eye. Civilization, after all, is measured by shared laws. The Cyclops simply do whatever they please. Curiosity gets the better of Odysseus. Rather than sail away, he selects 12 of his bravest companions and crosses to the mainland. He brings with him an especially strong wine, a gift once given by the priest Maron after the fall of Ismarus. Thick, sweet, and remarkably potent, it can be mixed with 20 parts water. Drinking it undiluted is generally considered an adventurous decision. The men soon discover a vast cave overflowing with cheese, milk, and wicker baskets filled with food. Massive pens hold hundreds of sheep and goats. Several of Odysseus's companions immediately suggest taking what they can and leaving before the owner returns. It is excellent advice. Odysseus ignores it. He wants to meet the cave's master, hoping to receive the sacred Greek custom of xenia, hospitality toward strangers. In the Greek world, travellers could expect food, shelter, and gifts before even stating their names. Zeus himself was believed to protect guests. The owner of the cave has never received that particular memo. As sunset falls, the ground begins to tremble beneath heavy footsteps. The Cyclops Polyphemus enters, driving his flock before him. He rolls an enormous boulder across the cave entrance, sealing it completely. The stone is so immense that 20 ordinary men could never hope to move it. Only then does the giant notice the unexpected visitors. He asks who they are. Odysseus politely explains that they are Greek sailors returning from Troy, and respectfully asks for hospitality under the protection of Zeus. Polyphemus laughs. To him, Zeus means nothing. The gods of civilized men hold no authority in his lonely cave. Without another word, he seizes 2 Greeks as easily as a child picking up dolls. Before the horrified survivors can react, he smashes them against the rocks and devours them raw. Bones crack. Blood stains the cave floor. Then, after finishing his gruesome meal, the giant stretches out among his sheep and calmly falls asleep. Panic grips the remaining men. Odysseus briefly considers driving his sword into the sleeping monster's heart. The opportunity is there. One swift strike would end the nightmare. But another problem quickly becomes obvious. If Polyphemus dies, no one inside the cave is strong enough to move the gigantic stone blocking the entrance. Killing the Cyclops now would simply turn the cave into a tomb. For perhaps the first time on this voyage, Odysseus realizes that surviving will require something even sharper than his sword. It will require the very quality that made him famous at Troy, his mind. As dawn breaks over the island, Polyphemus rises as though nothing unusual has happened. To him, yesterday's dinner was perfectly ordinary. He casually grabs 2 more of Odysseus's companions, kills them, and eats them before leading his sheep out to pasture. Once again, he seals the cave with the massive boulder, leaving the remaining Greeks trapped inside. The situation appears hopeless. Odysseus cannot overpower the giant. He cannot move the stone. Waiting patiently only guarantees that everyone will eventually become breakfast, lunch, or dinner. If there is to be any escape, it must come through deception. Fortunately, deception happens to be Odysseus's favourite profession. He notices a gigantic olive tree trunk lying inside the cave. The Cyclops has been drying it to use as a walking staff. Odysseus immediately sees another purpose. He and his companions cut a section from the trunk, sharpen one end into a point, and harden it in the fire before hiding it beneath piles of animal dung. It is an unpleasant hiding place, but one no Cyclops is likely to inspect too closely. That evening, Polyphemus returns. The giant repeats his dreadful routine, devouring 2 more unfortunate Greeks before settling down among his flock. Only then does Odysseus step forward, carrying the powerful wine he received from Maron. He offers it as a gift. Polyphemus has never tasted anything like it. The rich wine delights him, and he eagerly drinks cup after cup without adding water. For an ordinary Greek, this would already be reckless. For a creature the size of a small house, it is simply more alcohol. Soon the giant's speech begins to slur. Delighted with his guest's generosity, Polyphemus asks for the stranger's name so he can reward him. Odysseus smiles. "My name is Nobody." The answer seems ridiculous, but the drunken Cyclops accepts it without question. As a reward, he promises that nobody will be the very last person he eats. It is not exactly the gift Odysseus hoped for, but under the circumstances, surviving until dessert counts as progress. Moments later, Polyphemus collapses into a deep, drunken sleep. Odysseus gives the signal. Together, the surviving Greeks lift the sharpened olive stake, heat its tip until it glows red, and drive it with all their strength into the giant's single eye. The cave erupts with a scream so loud it echoes across the mountains. Blinded and roaring in agony, Polyphemus tears the stake from his eye while blood and smoke pour down his face. Other Cyclopes rush outside the cave and call out in concern. "What is wrong? Who is hurting you?" Still writhing in pain, Polyphemus bellows the only answer he can think of. "Nobody is killing me!" The other Cyclopes pause. If nobody is attacking him, then perhaps this is simply some illness sent by the gods. Shrugging, they return to their own caves, leaving Polyphemus completely alone. Odysseus' clever trick has worked perfectly. At first light, the blinded giant rolls away the entrance stone and feels the backs of every sheep as they leave for pasture, determined to catch the escaping Greeks. But Odysseus has anticipated even this. Each man clings beneath the thick wool of a ram, hidden from the Cyclops' searching hands. One by one, they pass safely into the sunlight. At last, Odysseus himself emerges beneath the largest ram of the flock. The Greeks race to their ship, cut the mooring lines, and row desperately away from shore. They have survived. They should simply keep rowing. Instead, Once the ship is safely beyond the rocks, Odysseus cannot resist one final act of pride. He shouts back, mocking the blinded giant and boasting of his victory. When Polyphemus demands to know who defeated him, Odysseus proudly reveals his true name. "I am Odysseus, son of Laertes, king of Ithaca." In that single moment, triumph becomes disaster. Polyphemus lifts his hands toward the sea and calls upon his father Poseidon, god of the oceans. He begs that Odysseus never reach home. Or, if fate insists that he does, let him arrive alone, after years of suffering, having lost every companion, only to find trouble waiting in his own house. Poseidon hears the prayer, and the sea begins to change. Leaving the island of the Cyclops behind, Odysseus carries more than battered ships and exhausted sailors. He now carries the anger of Poseidon himself, a burden no mortal would willingly choose. The sea seems quieter for a time, but beneath its calm surface the god's resentment waits patiently. Divine revenge, unlike fresh bread, keeps remarkably well. After several days, the fleet reaches the floating island of Aeolia, home of Aeolus, master of the winds. Unlike the savage Cyclopes, Aeolus welcomes strangers according to the sacred customs of hospitality. He feasts Odysseus and eagerly listens to the incredible tale of Troy, the wooden horse, and the terrifying encounter with Polyphemus. For an entire month, the king and the wandering hero exchange stories. When it is finally time to leave, Aeolus offers Odysseus an extraordinary gift. He gathers every troublesome wind into a great leather bag made from the hide of an ox. North, south, east, and west are all trapped inside, tightly sealed with a shining silver cord. Only the gentle west wind remains free to guide the Greeks safely home. It is perhaps the greatest navigation system ever invented. Aeolus gives Odysseus one simple instruction: do not open the bag. Odysseus carefully stores it aboard his flagship and personally guards it throughout the voyage. For 9 straight days and nights he barely sleeps, steering the fleet toward Ithaca. Then, at last, the impossible happens. The coastline of home appears on the horizon. The mountains of Ithaca rise from the sea. Smoke curls from distant villages. Odysseus is so close that he can almost imagine embracing Penelope and meeting the son who has grown into a man. After 9 sleepless days, exhaustion finally defeats him. He closes his eyes. That is all the opportunity his crew needs. The sailors have spent days whispering among themselves. They cannot understand why Odysseus protects the mysterious leather bag so carefully. Surely, they reason, it must contain gold, silver, or priceless treasures secretly given to their king. Apparently, after surviving witches, monsters, and cannibal giants, they still have not learned that curiosity is rarely profitable. As Odysseus sleeps, they untie the silver cord. Instantly, every imprisoned wind explodes into the open sea. The ships are hurled in every direction. Towering waves swallow the fleet as a furious hurricane drives them away from Ithaca. By the time Odysseus awakens, his homeland has completely vanished behind the storm. The men have quite literally blown away their chance to go home. With no other choice, they return to Aeolia. Odysseus hopes Aeolus will simply gather the winds again. Instead, the ruler of the winds looks upon the broken fleet with horror. He assumes only one explanation is possible. No ordinary man could suffer such astonishing misfortune unless the gods themselves hated him. Believing Odysseus has become cursed beyond help, Aeolus refuses another gift and orders the Greeks to leave his island forever. Once again, they sail into the unknown. Soon they reach the land of the Laestrygonians, a race of enormous giants far more dangerous than even the Cyclopes because they live together instead of alone. The harbour appears calm, surrounded by towering cliffs. Every Greek captain eagerly rows inside, believing they have found a safe place to anchor. Only Odysseus hesitates. Trusting his instincts, he leaves his own ship outside the narrow entrance. It is the decision that saves his life. The welcoming harbour is a trap. Within moments, the giants begin hurling massive boulders from the cliffs, smashing ships like children's toys. Others seize sailors with their bare hands, carrying the screaming men away to be eaten. Panic spreads through the fleet. The narrow entrance that promised safety now becomes a deadly bottleneck from which almost no one can escape. Only Odysseus's single ship, waiting outside the harbour, manages to cut its ropes and flee into the open sea. 11 ships are destroyed. Hundreds of loyal companions are gone. The proud fleet that left Troy with 12 vessels now consists of just one lonely ship, sailing toward an island where an enchantress named Circe is already waiting. Only one ship remains. Of the 12 proud vessels that sailed away from Troy, 11 now rest at the bottom of the sea, or lie shattered along the shore of the Laestrygonians. The survivors are exhausted, grieving, and beginning to wonder whether Poseidon intends to hunt them forever. After days of drifting, a heavily forested island appears on the horizon. Smoke rises gently above the trees, suggesting that someone or something lives there. This is Aiaia, home of the enchantress Circe. Odysseus divides his remaining crew into 2 groups. One stays behind to guard the ship, while the other, led by his trusted companion Eurylochus, explores the island in search of food and fresh water. Before long, they discover a magnificent stone palace surrounded by tame wolves and lions. Surprisingly, the animals do not attack. Instead, they wag their tails like loyal dogs greeting old friends. To any sensible traveller, this is an excellent moment to turn around immediately. Instead, the sailors knock on the door. Circe welcomes them warmly. She smiles, invites them inside, prepares a lavish meal of cheese, barley, honey and wine, and speaks with perfect kindness. The weary Greeks gladly accept her hospitality, believing that perhaps, at long last, fortune has begun to favour them. Only Eurylochus hesitates. Something feels wrong. He remains outside while the others feast. His caution proves wise. Hidden within the food is a powerful enchantment. The moment the sailors finish eating, Circe touches each one with her golden wand. Instantly, their bodies begin to change. Hands become hooves. Faces stretch into snouts. Voices dissolve into frightened squeals. Within moments, the proud veterans of Troy have become pigs. Their minds remain human, fully aware of the nightmare, but their bodies obey only their new animal forms. Circe calmly herds them into a sty and tosses them acorns for dinner. Eurylochus runs back to the beach in terror. He tells Odysseus everything. For perhaps the first time since leaving Troy, even Odysseus pauses. Fighting a giant is one thing. Fighting a woman who can turn soldiers into livestock is another entirely. Nevertheless, he refuses to abandon his companions. Alone, he climbs towards Circe's palace. Along the forest path, another immortal suddenly appears. Hermes, the swift messenger of the gods, has come to help. The young god hands Odysseus a rare magical herb called moly, its black root and white flower able to resist Circe's spells. He explains exactly what will happen. Circe will offer food. Accept it. She will strike with her wand. The spell will fail. Then draw your sword. Do not kill her, Hermes warns, but force her to swear an oath by the river Styx that she will do no further harm. Odysseus follows every instruction. Everything unfolds exactly as Hermes predicted. Circe serves the enchanted meal. Odysseus eats without fear. She touches him with her wand. Nothing happens. For the first time in countless years, her magic has failed. Startled, Circe barely has time to react before Odysseus draws his bronze sword and advances. The mighty enchantress, who moments earlier had transformed seasoned warriors into pigs without effort, suddenly finds herself begging for mercy. Keeping her oath, Circe immediately restores every sailor to human form. More remarkably still, she makes them younger, stronger, and healthier than before. The scars of war seem lighter, and hope briefly returns to the weary crew. What begins as a dangerous confrontation slowly becomes friendship. 1 month passes, then another. Before anyone notices, an entire year has slipped away in comfort. The men feast every day, sleep in warm beds, and forget the hardships of the sea. Eventually, it is the crew, not Odysseus, who remind their king why they came. Home still waits. Circe agrees to help them leave, but first she reveals a terrifying truth. If Odysseus wishes to reach Ithaca, he must sail somewhere no living man willingly goes. Before he can find the road home, he must first seek guidance from the dead themselves. Circe's final instructions are unlike anything Odysseus has ever heard. To find the road home, he must first sail to the edge of the world, beyond the lands of ordinary men, beyond the reach of the sun's familiar path, to the gloomy kingdom ruled by Hades and Persephone. There, among the countless spirits of the dead, he must seek the blind prophet Tiresias, whose wisdom remains untouched even after death. It is an unsettling assignment. Most heroes spend their lives trying to avoid the underworld. Odysseus is being told to visit it on purpose. Following Circe's directions, the lone Greek ship crosses a silent sea until it reaches the land of the Cimmerians, a mysterious people said to live beneath endless mist. Here, sunlight barely penetrates the heavy clouds. The landscape seems trapped in permanent twilight, as though even dawn hesitates to enter. Odysseus and his companions step ashore. Using his bronze sword, he digs a deep trench in the earth exactly as Circe instructed. Into it he pours offerings of milk, honey, sweet wine, fresh water, and barley. Finally, he sacrifices black sheep, allowing their blood to flow into the pit. Almost immediately, shadows begin to gather. Thousands of restless spirits emerge from the darkness. Young and old, kings and beggars, warriors and children, the dead press eagerly toward the blood, for it briefly restores their memories and voices. Terrified, Odysseus draws his sword and keeps every spirit away until Tiresias arrives. But before the prophet appears, another familiar figure approaches. It is Elpenor, one of Odysseus's own sailors. The young man had become drunk during the final night on Circe's island, fallen asleep on the palace roof, and upon waking suddenly, forgotten where he was. He stepped forward, lost his footing, and fell to his death. It is perhaps the least heroic death in all of Greek mythology. His ghost begs Odysseus to return later and give him a proper burial. Without funeral rites, his soul cannot find peace. Odysseus solemnly promises that he will. Before leaving Circe's island for the second time, the enchantress offers Odysseus one final series of warnings. The journey ahead cannot be completed without sacrifice. Some dangers can be avoided, others must simply be endured. The first threat is the sirens, mysterious creatures whose voices are so beautiful that no sailor who hears them ever wishes to leave. Drawn toward the irresistible music, ships crash upon hidden rocks, leaving only broken hulls and silent bones scattered along the shore. Circe gives precise instructions,